Welcome. Before I get going, I perhaps want to provide some opening comments. And the opening comments really is a case of there is a convergence of policy initiatives, conditions that are happening with our natural resources, water pricing, expectations from our community that are sort of leading us to a point in time where we think water-sensitive urban design and how we approach our urban landscapes require some action. And we've all been around water infrastructure in our communities, water policy development in the private sector, applying different approaches. But I think it's really the time is ripe is probably what I'm getting to about where we need to go with regard to our local communities, our approach to a water-sensitive city. And we're all leading down this track, and I'll just go through that briefly through my presentation. So, where am I doing this one? Over here. So, the water-sensitive urban design state government policy. So, people have been around for a very long time, and it's not a new thing. It's through, I think, maybe several machinery of government changes ago, and through the 30-year plan for Greater Adelaide, water-sensitive urban design has featured in some way or another. And so it was finally released in late 2013. There was a debate. It really sort of came from 30-year plan, but also through the development of Water for Good, which was the state government's water security plan out to 2050, and that was released in 2009. Now, of course, that was part of a bigger water security plan, which included diversifying our water sources and very much like stormwater harvesting, wastewater harvesting, and also the Adelaide desalination plant. Now, that development of that policy document, and it's seen quite internationally as a great policy document, was done in a time of crisis, obviously through the drought. So it really informed government policy there. So there were some quick decisions made, and literally getting a desal plant from design approvals up and running within a 3-year period was seen quite extraordinary. We just recently had a Californian delegation, including some legislators over, who can't get over the fact how we approached our water management, the fact that we've got some of our water policies up and running within a very short time frame. Water-sensitive urban design, I would think, was probably taking a bit longer. We're sort of embedding it, but I think the opportunity to actually leapfrog many other jurisdictions is with us today. So it's obviously the targets around water conservation. Oh, have I got the right one up? Yep. Runoff quantity and quality, integrated design, and there you probably already got this. That's the actual policy, and it has the 14 actions which commit the state government to implementing. So what are the things that have led us to this? There's a few strategic priorities which are setting the scene for us and driving us further. And the one that I've been most intimately involved with just recently is the development of the climate change strategy for the state. And really the projections from the Goyder Institute and the CSIRO indicates to us in the Adelaide Mount Lofty Ranges areas, we've got some significant climate change impacts that we'll be dealing with. Increased days over 35 degrees and 40 degrees. We know that rainfall will be decreasing anywhere between 7 and 15% over the next few decades. So the climate change and the impacts we are experiencing are here and with us. We are in the process of developing a climate change strategy, and we have been out in 14 different workshops across the length and breadth of this state. And key issues that are coming back is about urban design, the planning of our suburbs, and water. So clearly in the minds of our communities. Creating a vibrant city, and Adelaide, heart of a vibrant state. So these are real clear things. The state government wanted our city to be some place where it's attractive to people to live, to work, to recreate, to visit. And part of that has obviously been about some of the wine bars, pop-ups, all those types of things. But clearly, as we move into the 21st century, living in green space, there's a healthy neighbourhoods as well. It's another government priority. And that, again, is about having a safe place to live, but also public amenity with regard to community health, attractive places and suburbs for people to live in. So we have a lot of strategic state priorities which are influencing a lot of our policy shaping as we go forward. So, and WUSD is a really important part of that. So what are the actual targets that we've outlined in water sensitive urban design? As we go through the day, let's focus on what we're actually going to be talking about and trying to implement. Water conservation, I won't go into these, you can read them off and you would probably all know these far more intimately than I. The whole water conservation, and these, I think the important point is that these targets were underpinned by good policy and science, which was undertaken by the Goyder Institute. So in 2011. So the runoff quality, integrated design, which of course is a key part of that from a local implementation perspective. So we have the policy released in 2011 and we've undertaken some important steps with regard to some of the capacity building which you'll hear about, which is Water Sensitive SA has really been taking the charge on. So we've got the framework, but it really is the implementation. So having a policy doesn't mean that it is we're seeing a consistent approach across the state. So the policy is flexible enough to allow for those locally relevant targets to be implemented and included, and it's obviously really important that we are communicating, engaging with the relevant stakeholders. So Water Sensitive SA and the creation of that, the AMLR board, has been a really important part as the mechanism to drive that change. So there are 14 key actions within that policy document that you have. But I suppose the key ones that is obviously adopting water sensitive urban design in state projects. Government has enormous regulatory and procurement levers, as does local government. So how do we actually use those levers in a way that we can have implementation across the state? So it's not potentially about having new money, because there's not much of that around at the moment. But what about our existing procurement levers? Where are we putting those projects? How do we incorporate that? So that's underway. So we do have water sensitive urban design in our policy library, but it's about strengthening what we have. And we've got an opportunity at the moment because we are reviewing our 30-year plan for Greater Adelaide, and reform in our planning legislation is happening right at this moment. So we do want to strengthen water sensitive urban design in our state planning system, and of course in the planning policy library. So that's underway too, and discussion, and Andrew Greer will pick that up further when he discusses what's happening in the planning space. I think the key part, and I think when we look at places like Melbourne, where water sensitive urban design has been very much embedded, it's about the capacity building. And that really has been the focus of Water Sensitive SA. How do we build the capacity? We might have the policy, so these are the targets. How do you actually ensure that the capacity, either in the private sector or in local government, is there to implement? So that's commenced. The research we mentioned before, the CSIRO and the extensive research undertaken by the Goyder Institute has been ongoing. So we're still having the research to actually have that evidence base for implementation. Okay. Another key lever that we have, which is through the Stormwater Management Authority, which is a joint authority with local government and state government. So we have stormwater management plans that there's underpinned by legislation, and there's a stormwater management fund that we have. So it's actually how do we use those existing plans to embed water sensitive urban design. I think to date it'd be fair to say it's been a real focus on flooding and flooding management, but how do you actually embed water sensitive urban design in those stormwater management plans and in the criteria, and that work is underway as well. And it's been committed in through the Stormwater Management Agreement. And of course, the measure of how you are succeeding is through your monitoring. And of course, that's underway too. How do we make sure that we're actually measuring our success in implementation? And Goyder is actually underpinning that work as well. So really, I'm finishing on the last slide. Oops, sorry, no, I'm not. We make our buildings and afterwards they make us. So that is a quote from Winston Churchill, which I think is still pretty much relevant today, is that we can build our suburbs and then they reflect how we want to live our lives and how we want our communities to live. But I think I just would leave you with that convergence of climate change impacts, community expectations, and the fact that we need to manage our water resources, which are increasingly under stress. And the timing is right to actually have full implementation across the state. So good luck for today. I think we have got a great agenda, and so I think that's it for me.